When you are in a state of shock, your eyes are wide open and your jaw drops. Whatever it is that causes you that shock, you're often not thinking straight and are sometimes completely immobilized from all that anxiety and surprise. Of course, the term shock is many times used loosely and doesn't really reference the reality of medical shock. Thus, I'm going to cover a more serious case of shock, one that has nothing to do with being caused by the latest ratings ploy by your favorite attention-seeking entertainer. Other than a paper bag over a person's head on a red carpet, inappropriate bodily gyrations, and a, quote, wardrobe malfunction, shock can occur as a result of something known as cardiogenic shock. Cardiogenic shock is a state of inadequate cardiac output despite adequate intravascular volume, resulting in hypoxia. Cardiac output refers to the volume of blood your heart pumps out into circulation. Intravascular volume is the amount of fluid within your blood vessels, and hypoxia refers to an inadequate amount of oxygen supply or utilization in a region of or the entire body. In general, shock, medically speaking, refers to a physiological state of inadequate tissue perfusion throughout the body, resulting in cellular malfunction and tissue death, most importantly in the heart, kidneys, and brain. In normal person speak, this means that your tissues and organs do not receive normal amounts of oxygen via the blood vessels. Since your cells, organs, and tissues rely on oxygen to function, the lack of oxygen delivery leads to cellular death, subsequent organ malfunction, and death thereafter. One of the causes for this is heart disease, as I just mentioned. That's why we term shock stemming from heart problems as cardiogenic. Think of the heart as the pump fueling the sprinkler system in our backyard. The sprinkler system consists of pipes and sprinklers watering the grass. If the pump fails, then the pipes get little water and the sprinklers can't spray the grass with life-giving water. This means the grass will eventually wilt and die. Anyhow, it is often erroneously assumed that shock always refers to a state where low blood pressure, hypotension, is measured in a patient. This is not true. In early stages of shock, a person's blood pressure may be completely normal or even increased. In fact, if a patient is hypotensive, that means they are in the worst stages of shock, when the body can no longer compensate for this dire situation using internal emergency mechanisms. Furthermore, in a basic sense, tissue perfusion refers to the volume of blood flowing through a particular tissue. It is not synonymous with blood pressure, nor do they always go hand in hand. The thing is, sometimes a person's blood pressure is just fine, but they have inadequate tissue perfusion. For instance, if a blood vessel flowing to a tissue is blocked by something like a clot, blood pressure and blood volume may be perfectly fine in 99% of the body, but at the point following the blockage, tissue perfusion will be non-existent. Basically, if one pipe in your sprinkler system is blocked, then the patch of grass supplied by that pipe will die, even though the water pressure in the pipe itself is just fine. The most common cause of cardiogenic shock is a severe heart attack, many times as a result of coronary heart disease that leads to myocardial ischemia, an inadequate supply of oxygen to the heart as a result of clogged coronary arteries. The bottom line is that in cardiogenic shock, the heart is unable to properly contract as a result of serious damage. If your heart can't contract appropriately, then it cannot pump enough blood into the aorta and out into circulation, resulting in tissue hypoperfusion or low tissue perfusion. Tissues that do not receive an adequate blood flow through them accumulate lactic acid or lactate as a result of energetic processes that occur in low oxygen states. This is the same stuff that accumulates in your muscles after you work out a lot. Accumulation of this causes acidosis, a state of too much acid in the body, which is not conducive to life. Therefore, a person in shock may be hyperventilating or breathing very quickly in order to breathe acidic CO2 out of the body. Getting rid of excess acidic substances by breathing them out obviously helps to minimize the effects of acidosis caused by low oxygen states. Further still, the body tries to compensate for decreased tissue perfusion by raising the blood pressure. It does this by telling the kidneys to retain more fluid and to vasoconstrict blood vessels through the use of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Additionally, the sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate and force of contraction in the hopes of increasing the low cardiac output present during cardiogenic shock. Basically, the sprinkler system's maintenance man tries to pump more water into the system, increase the pump's force of contraction and the rate at which it works by increasing the flow of electricity, all in order to try and compensate for the failing system. The problem is that excess fluid retention by the kidneys gives the damaged heart a lot more fluid to work with than it may otherwise handle under healthy conditions. This combines with an increased heart rate that doesn't allow the heart to fill up with enough blood for ejection, and arterial vasoconstriction that makes it more difficult for the weak heart to eject any blood that it does become filled with during diastole. All of this results in a backup of fluid into the lungs, causing severe breathing difficulties. This exacerbates the acidotic state because the CO2 cannot be breathed off and oxygen cannot be breathed in efficiently when your lungs are filled with fluid. Finally, the increased heart rate and contractility triggered by the sympathetic nervous system increases the demand for oxygen by the heart itself. Just like you need more oxygen when working out, so too does your heart need more oxygen when it works harder and faster. But because our heart's blood supply is blocked during coronary heart disease, not enough oxygen gets through to the heart. This causes the cells of the heart that now need even more oxygen, increased amounts of which they cannot receive due to the blockage, to die even faster. What I hope you can appreciate by now is that while your body is trying to help you in this emergency state, it cannot do so for long because the compensatory mechanisms will end up causing more harm than good in the long run. That is why a person who has normal or increased blood pressure during a state of shock shouldn't be ignored, because sooner than later, the body will have no more energy by which to compensate. A hypotensive state will ensue and the person will die. To treat cardiogenic shock, blood thinning and clot dissolving medication may be given to help improve blood flow to the heart. Inotropic medication that makes your heart stronger when it pumps, might be administered. Oxygen is administered for what should be obvious reasons by now. A person may be placed on a ventilator if breathing is compromised, and IV fluids may be administered to improve perfusion and blood pressure. Surgical correction, as necessary for the underlying heart problem, may be necessary as well. As a review, recall that shock refers to a physiological state of inadequate tissue perfusion throughout the body, resulting in cellular malfunction and tissue death, most importantly in the heart, kidneys, and brain. One specific form of this is cardiogenic shock. Cardiogenic shock is a state of inadequate cardiac output despite adequate intravascular volume, resulting in hypoxia. Recall that hypoxia refers to an inadequate amount of oxygen supply or utilization in a region of or the entire body, and tissue perfusion refers to the volume of blood flowing through a particular tissue. During cardiogenic shock, the heart is unable to pump enough blood out into the circulation, and the body tries to compensate by retaining fluid, increasing heart rate and contractility. All of this eventually causes more harm than good, leading to hypotension and death.